Panie profesorze.
Witam serdecznie.
Dziękuję, panie
Witam
profesorze, że pan
serdecznie.
profesor zgodził się wystąpić w tym panelu w takiej roli. Jeszcze raz przepraszam, że tak późno. Tutaj troszkę zszwankowały nasze komunikatory z Przemkiem, ale bardzo dziękuję jeszcze raz.
Z wielką przyjemnością. Jestem zaszczycony. W ogóle jestem naprawdę zachwycony.
To dla nas wielki zaszczyt, panie profesorze.
Uczestnictwem w sympozjum.
Dziękuję jeszcze raz. Widzę też panią Anię Wójcik. Dzień dobry, pani Aniu. Na razie jeszcze po polsku zaraz przejdziemy.
Panie profesorze.
Pan profesor będzie prowadził sesję. Dyskutantką będzie pani profesor Joanna Rak z naszego wydziału. Jest już Jasia. Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry pani profesor. Tak.
Dobry, panie profesorze. Miło być w tak wspaniałym gronie.
No właśnie, wspaniałym gronie, rzeczywiście. Bardzo się cieszę. Widzę, że...
za tak punktualnie zaczniemy o godzinie. Jest Bartek też, Chordecki. Cześć Bartku.
Cześć, dzień dobry Państwu. Bardzo mi miło.
Tak, to bardzo wymagająca sesja, bo krótka i musimy koniecznie skończyć przed ceremonią zamknięcia, jak rozumiem.
No, ceremonia to mocno powiedziane, ale generalnie podsumowanie, tak, zaraz wiem, że w tej chwili jeszcze jest spotkanie, tak, akurat w tej przerwie przewodniczących RC w IPS-ie w związku z kongresem w 2023 roku i być może, nie wiem, czy już Oskar będzie miał okazję, żeby powiedzieć, a chociaż myślę, że to poprzez poszczególne RC będą komunikaty przesyłane. Myślę, że niedawno zakończyliśmy poprzednią sesję, tę plenarną z udziałem między innymi pana profesora Moralesa, specjalnego wysłannika Narodów Zjednoczonych do spraw migrantów i profesora Sugurowa. Myślę, że było to bardzo, bardzo interesujące doświadczenie.
Bardzo interesująca sesja, tak, ja też się zgadzam, tak. Władysław jest with us?
Okay. Yes, with us. Yes, hello. Okay. We can jump into the English session. However, we have maybe 2 minutes to 3 p.m.
Is Krzysztof Duda with us? Duda?
Krzysztof, yes. However, Krzysztof is in the same room here with me. Yeah, because we are on faculty in the special room number 56.
Okay.
Yeah, this is in fact the Dean room. Today and yesterday this is our center of this conference here.
Yeah.
However, I thought today, Krzysztof is joining to this session, to this room.
Hello.
And I thought that maybe this is very significant, that such conference about impact of COVID in many aspects, among others, aspects of, for example, lockdown, we conduct online. Yeah, so in such a mode, I think that is significant. Of course, the reason is a little bit different because it's every day in Poland, more hundreds.
More than, yeah. It's really coming to 600, yeah. I think we have one person missing. Yeah, is Mr. Adamczyk with us?
We are waiting for him.
Yes, I am.
Also with us.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, where are you? In fact, now in Dubai or in Egypt?
Yes, right now I'm in Dubai. I was in Egypt last month, but now I'm in Dubai, yes.
And Wojciech, I can see Wojciech here on the list. Wojciech, could you switch on your camera, please?
Is it necessary? I have a
Frank is speaking
presentation.
yes. If it's possible, of course.
My laptop's camera is permanently off.
Okay.
Really?
Okay. Okay. So, however, your voice is very clear, so it's.
We can see your picture as well, so it's okay.
Okay, so we can start the last session, the impact of the health crisis on freedom of expression and media freedom. And I would like to ask Professor Wojciech Forsiński from Eastern Mediterranean University for chairing this session. Thank you very much, Professor. This is a huge privilege and honor for us. My special thanks goes to Professor Jan Narak from our university for playing the role of discussant. Thank you very much. We have
Thank you.
a few
Okay.
speeches, among other my colleague.
Yes, I understand. Okay.
Yeah. Professor,
Thank you.
The floor is yours. The floor is open.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for letting me participate in this seminar. Yeah, I'm delighted and honored to be part of this symposium. Yeah, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to session 6 of the IPSA RC26 Human Rights International Symposium. How have the years 2020, 2021 changed the world? First, let me welcome the speakers of this session. Wojciech Adamczyk from Adam Mickiewicz University, Anna Wójcik from the Wiktor Osiatyński Archive, Rule of Law in Poland, Bartosz Hordecki, Jędrzej Skrzypczak, Krzysztof Duda, Władysław Ziniczenko and Wellnell from Adam Mickiewicz University. And let me also warmly welcome our discussant, Professor Joann Narak from Adam Mickiewicz University as well. And let me also welcome people who watch our session on YouTube. You will be able to watch and to ask questions if you want. And let me invite everyone to the closing ceremony that will take place at 4:30. And that, ladies and gentlemen, means that the time frame of our session is pretty tight, and we need to be economical with the time. Therefore, my suggestion is that presentations do not exceed 10 minutes. Maybe joint presentation 12 minutes, yeah, but otherwise I request the speakers to strictly stick to the time schedule. We need to save some time for the comments, questions, and answers. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me give the floor to the first speaker, Wojciech Adamczyk, and he will talk about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on changes in the media market and information pluralism. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you see
10
the
minutes.
first picture of my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
I can.
Okay. From time to time, events occur in the history of mankind that significantly affect the course of events. Vladimir Ilyich Lenin said there are decades when nothing happens, and when there come weeks when more is happening than in previous decades. The COVID-19 pandemic has significantly affected various aspects of media market around the world. The coronavirus pandemic has caused a continuous increase in media consumption as people around the world struggle to keep abreast of the rapidly changing crisis. One of the visible effects of the COVID-19 pandemic was the shifting of large group of employees, including, of course, journalists, to work remote. In 2020, the number of full-time remote employees in the USA was 42%, and in Germany, 35%. At the same time, according to Eurostat data, approximately 10% of European Union citizens work remotely. However, in Central and Eastern Europe alone, it was only 1%. Several months of experience in remote work of media employees show the advantages and disadvantages of this way of organizing work and managing human resources. First, about advantages. Greater flexibility at work thanks to communication tools. Journalists are more often involved in new journalistic formats.
Wojtek, I'm sorry that for my interruption. However, we can see the first slide. I don't know, this is your intention or not?
No,
we can see the first slide, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Sorry.
To dziwne. I start again, okay? And now, what can you see?
Still the first slide.
First.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. I try to show you all presentation, but I don't know why I can do it. One more again. And what are you?
Still the first.
Still the first.
Yeah, but we see how you moving the mouse, I guess, yeah. Now, at least now I can see how you move the mouse.
Well, it's some problem with my Zoom.
With the mouse, the second slide.
Yeah, put the cursor on second slide.
And now, what can you see?
No, still the first.
Still the first. Okay. I don't know what happened. Well, let me speak further because the time is shortly. Okay.
Yes. Please.
Yes. One of the visible effects of the COVID-19 pandemic was the shifting of a large group of employees, including journalists, to work remote. I told about this, yes. And now about advantages. I told about flexibility, saving time and money. Journalists don't have to travel to the editorial office. Greater chances of reporters from the local newsrooms appearing in the national media thanks internet connections. More effective protection against infection. And now a few examples about disadvantages of remote work. Lack of coordination between reporters and editors. This is a real problem in newsrooms. Journalism apprentices isolated from the older colleagues have no one to learn their profession from. Problem with stimulating the creativity of team and proper supervision. Lack of contact had a negative effect on psyche of journalists. Job insecurity. Journalists take care about job, salary, and so on. An avalanche of misinformation difficult to verify quickly. Problems with obtaining confidential information from news sources in the era of lockdown. Permanent overtime, we all experience it. Problems with meeting the deadline for submitting material for publication. No home conditions for work. Media may lose some of its magic since the journalist broadcast from home. According to the audience, anyone can do it. What is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the media market? Certainly, several effects can be indicated. Dismissals in newsrooms. For example, in the USA, According to the Pew Research Center, in 2020, as many as 1/3 of newspapers laid off their employees, connecting the editorial staff, forced reduction in wages, suspension of publishing press titles, reduction of the frequency of publication of newspaper editions from 5 to 3 a week or from 6 to 4 a week, forced leaves of editorial staff, collapse of press titles. For example, in the USA, according to the Poynter report, 85 local newsrooms were permanently closed during the pandemic. With the closure of more newspapers, information deserts have sprung up across the country. Information deserts have been defined as communities where residents do not have a local newspaper or face severely limited access to news and information that is essential for a grassroots democracy. Out of 3,143 counties in the USA, 200 of them now have longer a daily newspaper or weekly magazine, affecting 3.2 million people. In addition, 1,449 counties have only one newspaper, usually published weekly. Finally, there is no daily newspaper in 2,000 counties. The inhabitants of these informational deserts tend to be older, poorer, and less educated than the general population. What about impact on media market? Closing printing houses, connecting branches, selling of offices, resignation from renting and moving to cheaper location, a resignation from the paper version in favor of online, shifting employees to remote work. Bloomberg called remote work in a pandemic the world's biggest experiment, but the unusual working conditions of journalists and the media during lockdown revealed other threats to the flow of information. The most serious threats to the flow of information negatively affect the level of pluralism in three aspects: content, information sources, and content providers. First, about impact on content. The need for savings resulted in an increase in the use of ready-made information. As a result, the media became, to a much greater extent, a channel for reaching the public opinion by the government, but there was no often critical assessment. Misinformation and disinformation, a lot of untrue content and even fabricated conspiracy theories appeared in traditional media and social media because editorial office plagued by decades of layoffs often lack reporters and editors who specialize in reporting on public health. Informing about the pandemic has become a priority. However, the ever-changing and sometimes unverified nature of published COVID-19 data forces journalists to provide accurate information to the public. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed our media habits. According to Nielsen, video streaming increased significantly in 2020, as did news consumption and listening to the radio. Publishers produced new products such as blogs, podcasts, alerts, and newsletters. Impact on information sources are primarily the decline in revenue meant the content diversity has decreased. Lower revenues limit the production of news and expensive formats such as journalistic investigation. With the closure of more newspapers, information deserts appeared. I told about it before. Restriction on access to information introduced by governments. According to data collected by International Press Institute, in 2020, an alarming number of European governments, especially in Eastern and Central Europe, used the ongoing health crisis as an excuse to restrict the free flow of information. In European countries such as Malta, Croatia, Hungary, Russia, Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, Moldova, the Czech Republic, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Slovenia, Poland, Spain, and Austria, journalists had limited access to information and difficult ability to verify official data. Economic problems of freelancers as an independent sources of information. As a third aspect of is the impact on content providers. First, lockdown accelerated the digital transformation of larger media companies while highlighting the weaknesses of smaller and regional media, which often were not prepared on such fast changes caused by pandemic. Non-transparent system of granting public aid to the media, for example, in Hungary and Malta. The harassment of independent media and journalists by authorities with trials for defamation and obstruction of access to information.
Excuse me, you need to wrap up your presentation, please. Yeah?
How long?
1 minute.
1 minute, okay. Marketing budgets are falling over the world. According to the Global Entertainment and Media Outlook report prepared by PricewaterhouseCoopers for 2020 to 2024, global press advertising, print and web, will drop from $49.2 billion in 2019 to $36 billion in 2024, a decrease of more than a quarter within 5 years. Consequences for media pluralism and freedom of information. European governments are increasingly using emergency legislation to fight coronavirus to push through restrictions that seriously undermine press freedom. A smaller number of operating media means a reduction in diversity of content, information sources, and content providers. There is a real threat that the authorities will extend the periods during which the regulations limiting the freedom of the media will be kept in force. The migration of readers from print to digital editions may play a role in the uncontrolled spread of disinformation on the internet. That's all.
Thank you very much indeed for your presentation. And I would like also to inform you that Professor Rak will present her comments at the end of the session. So now I invite Anna Wójcik to make her presentation. That will be on the strategic lawsuit against public participation in Poland. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Please, the floor is yours. Yes.
Thank you very much for inviting me to present at this amazing conference. I must disclose that I'm a part of a team, of a research team in a project strategic law solution OKO, the publisher of OKO Press. We have the grant from the Rafter Foundation for Human Rights. And this is a pioneering project because we are focusing on the issue of legal harassment of not only journalists and editors, as it is usually the case when we discuss SLAPs in Europe and mostly in Western Europe. But this is a research project that focuses actually on the various forms of harassment against activists or people who speak out in public interest in Poland. And we have decided to launch this project with a name to actually document big lawsuits or criminal lawsuits or criminal cases brought by state authorities against individuals. And actually, one of the main findings that we have so far is that the big lawsuits that would be covered by the press are not the core problem. Usually target people who are already very well-known public figures and who have been already quite quite present in the media in Poland. And this can include people who have been defending the rule of law, such as independent prosecutor Katarzyna Kwiatkowska, or constitutional law professor Wojciech Sadurski, who had many cases against him for his statements made on Twitter that were critical to the governing majority. And it could be also an LGBT activist, a prominent activist such as Bart Staszewski, who has been denouncing the idea of some communes in Poland to introduce legislation or resolutions that were discriminatory to LGBT people. But actually what we managed to achieve within this project was to conduct 17 interviews in the past 6 months with also people who have not been known to the public before. The women's strikes protests. These were the protests against the government policy on reproductive rights, but also anti-government generally. And to speak to the doctors who have been informing the public about the COVID pandemic, and who actually had the cases brought against them for defamation of certain officials. The presumption of our project was that most of the people who were interviewed, who would be the case studies, there would be facing really significant civil and criminal lawsuits. And in the end, one of the findings that we had is that actually the main problem are the provisions of law that are being used, some minor provisions of law in petty offenses code or petty crimes, such as, for instance, blocking the road or disrespecting the official road sign, and that this is also one of the areas that so far has not been under the radar of most researchers, lawyers, but also political scientists and sociologists, that we need to see how the state apparatus is approaching people who speak out in the public interest, also when it harasses them in a way that it uses minor legal provisions, so minor provisions of law. And actually, the nature of SLAPP is also often discussed in the existing literature on the topic that usually focuses on the cases against journalists, is that the aim of such lawsuits is not to win the case, but it is to exhaust the time, effort, psychological, financial resources of the target. And actually, when we see many prominent lawsuits against journalists today, and in Poland, this is an increasing problem in the past 2 years, we have seen an avalanche of lawsuits against most prominent government critic, Gazeta Wyborcza newspaper, or also against smaller media outlets such as Oko Press, where I contribute with my analysis. But in the case of big and medium-sized newsrooms, actually these newsrooms have networks and ways to communicate that they have been on the target, and they actually also have access to some legal help. Whereas in contrast, the people who are just lay citizens or activists, but without the big networks of support, they do not have this access and knowledge that they are victims of SLAPPs even. So with our research projects, we aim at actually explaining the phenomenon and highlighting the importance of that society actually is aware that even the maybe not spectacular, but nonetheless very upsetting daily harassment of people is a cause of concern, and that it impacts the quality of democracy in Poland, and that it actually may lead to people withdrawing from participation in demonstrations, from limiting the ways how they protest, which limits their right to protest and also the right to free expression. And in the framework of this project, we have found that a pro bono legal support network for activists under attack is of great importance. And some of people who have been put on the target were able to organize collections. They were crowdfunding for the legal aid and litigation costs. However, still very many people are simply unaware that what is happening to them. For example, when they are being summoned to court as a witness, and they do not know whether the proceedings would actually, in the end, be launched against them as a perpetrator of some petty crime or regular crime. And so they are not always aware that they even are target of some form of harassment that should be made illegal. So with our project, we are not only describing the procedure of pressure, but we are also giving them a voice. We are recording their experiences. And we also believe that this is a form of civil society self-defense as a form of collective learning that may lead in the future to maybe not only limiting the state or organizations, individuals who share the state's litigation and legal harassment towards some activists, but that it will at least increase the awareness of such an issue among Polish society at large, and that it will result in, on one hand, increased awareness and knowledge of legal representatives, but also of judges who would be more alerted than they are today to the fact that some of the cases that they are hearing, some of the people that they are representing, they are actually not only facing typical threats, legal threats, such as some petty offense, but that they are actually being part of a broader, wider struggle to shrink the space for civil society in their country. And I think this is really important to reach out with this message to, on one hand, the general population, because then we hope that this message could be targeted at people who one day, when they are faced with such harassment or legal obstacles, then they will be more aware that they can or should seek help. And then that the people who can provide them help, such as legal representatives, they will also know that the cases at hand requires specific framing, that they are a wider research project. We have found so far that still citizens can rely on courts, because in the past 25 years, courts in Poland, in most cases regarding the freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, they have
1 minute.
They have developed a case law that is actually beneficial to the rights and freedoms of individuals. However, we have seen also some alarming developments. Recently, journalist Ewa Siedlecka was targeted by the authorities. She lost a case in the Polish court and is actually the first person who is convicted for her journalism about the scandal at the Ministry of Justice. We have also seen that that there are threats made against activists by organizations that are not officially associated with the government, but they are directly and directly supported today with huge amounts of public money because they share certain elements of the current government's agenda. And I think that these developments are really threatening to the character and quality of democracy that we have today. And I only actually in my presentation wanted to maybe make you interested in the output of a research project that will be published probably in January or February next year in the form of a report available in Polish and in English. And I also want to encourage you to follow the work of Agnieszka Jędrzejczyk, and myself that is being published at OCA Press quite regularly. So thank you very much for your time and attention and for listening to my short introduction.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your insightful presentation and for keeping with the time limit. So we'll move on to the presentation by Bartosz Hordecki that will be on the implementation of the law on securing the functioning of Ukrainian as a state language in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah, the floor is yours. 10 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for having an opportunity to give the presentation during this conference. My special thanks to the organizers and to Professor Jędrzej Skrzypczak. It's a pleasure and honor. And I'm sorry for the long title, but unfortunately the title of the law is very long. Yes, but well, my presentation is rather long, but time is short, so I will try to make it in a nutshell, and I will try to show the main line of my reasoning here. And well, I'm not pretty sure if you can see my presentation now.
First slide, yes, yeah.
Yes, and the second, for example, now?
Yes,
yes,
I can,
okay.
yeah.
Great, thank you very much for the support. And well, I have noticed, I'm developing my research projects in the field of language policies and language politics also within the frame of IPSA, where we've got this research committee 50, which is politics of language. And I have noticed that we've got a very interesting situation when it comes to talk about the development of COVID and the development of language policy in Ukraine. I mean that in 2019, the President Poroshenko signed the law, which the title we've got on the screen. And this law, let's say, was dedicated to Zelensky. And Zelensky was put in the situation in which he's constantly checked by others if he is fulfilling the provisions of this law, we could say. And this law is sequential, so many provisions of this law come into force in various moments of, let's say, of the historical process. Yes, so for example, in 2021, we've got plenty of provisions which came into force, and it's coming to force sequentially, just like pandemic, we could say. Pandemic is also developing sequentially, yes? So I thought that it would be good to show it parallel, yes, how it goes, yes? I mean the pandemic and the implementation of this law. And what is also interesting, we've got this commissioner, State Language Protection Commissioner. It's a new institution which was designed in this law I'm talking about, and this is a person in Ukraine who is especially responsible for protecting this Ukrainian language and for developing the state language policy, and also for monitoring the state language policy. Yes, and what I did in this presentation is that I took this annual report, which was published in 2021. It is about 2020 and about the implementation of this law. And I found all the information about the COVID, how the COVID could impact the implementation of this state language policy in Ukraine. And I found a lot of very small facts about let's say, relations between COVID and this Ukrainian state language policy. Well, here we've got them. So there were notions, remarks about general impact on state institutions, impact on publishing in Ukrainian, and so on and so on. The president, the state language talking about COVID-19 and restricting the budget of the commissioner, the pandemic and functioning of the secretary of the commissioner. Yes, so we had such facts, such notions. Yes, they are not very combined together, but what I would like to show you is that those facts can be implemented, can be, let's say, included into the general narrative of the Ukrainian state about language policy and about internal factors which influence this state policy of the Ukrainian state. And this narrative I would like to talk about is very multi-leveled and multidimensional. And I would like to show you during my presentation that this COVID is a possibility to create another layer of this story about how should deal the Ukrainian state with language policy issues. And so we've got some remarks I was talking about. So, for example, the first remark that for sure global COVID-19 pandemic has influenced the proceedings of the Ukrainian institutions, make them harder to fulfill their obligations. Another thing is that considering restrictions related to the COVID-19 pandemic, the attention we should pay to the state of book publishing in Ukraine. And it was showed by the commissioner that the situation of the Ukrainian language is worse because we've got less money to do this, but we have no single mention about other languages. What about them? Then we've got the state provided publishers with institutional assistance. Yes, so we've got this, let's say, this motive of supporting people who would like to publish in Ukrainian. Then in this report, we've got also a very interesting notion, yes, that it was a moment when the president of Ukraine used the Russian language to talk about COVID. Yes, this law I'm talking about, it expects from the officers, the politicians of the Ukrainian state that they will be using Ukrainian as a state language because they are officials, yes? So we've got the notion in this report that the Russian president extraordinarily used this Russian language. So they are doing such things, such notions. Yes, and it was explained that it was extraordinary because we were talking about the health issues. Another thing we have is about shortening money, which belong to the Bureau of the Commissioner. And of course, there were a lot of mentions about that they were working online and so on and so on. So we could say single facts, how to make a narrative from them. Yes, well, another fact, the Minister of Health and the Minister of Communication and Information Policy prepared a leaflet on protection against COVID-19. And firstly, this leaflet was firstly, it was only in Ukrainian, Polish, Crimean, Tatar, and Hungarian without Russian. And after some months, yes, the Russian and other languages were added. Yes, so what we have, yes, we have a consciousness that the COVID-19 pandemic should be somehow used in this general narrative, yes, but there is no a general idea how to make the consistent story from this. So we've got separate facts, separate notions, and so on and so on. Yeah, but we can show something deeper, yes, and I would like to start with that all those facts, yes, well, they are used by the commissioner and by other officers like excuses. Yes, so nobody knows how to deal with COVID and how to combine the COVID with these language issues and language policy, yes, but everybody knows that it has to be noted and there should be references. Yes, so each official is looking for some small narrative, which is a kind of excuse. Yes, and it's exactly what we have.
1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute. and maybe in 1 minute, so I will go to the end. Well, I wanted to show in my presentation that as we have in this last slide, the COVID pandemic can influence the Ukrainian language policy, and everybody knows that, yes, but nobody knows how to make a narrative about this, yes. And the second thing, how the Ukrainian language policy can influence the COVID-19, well, we don't have a lot of information about this. And everybody knows that it's extremely important because it is an existential issue, yes? And it's existential on two levels. It is about, it is possible to have the Ukrainian state in the future, but also in the level of individuals. And here we've got a very serious conflict. If I had time, I would talk about it very deeply and on many different levels. So I hope I suppose we should end my presentation with this very short remark. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I will use this powerful tool you are talking about, language, to say thank you for your presentation. I look forward really to seeing your presentation in full, published later on. Thank you very much indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the next presentation. I invite Professor Skrzypczak and Dr. Duda to talk about the freedom of speech during the time of pandemic COVID-19. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. 12 minutes.
Can you see us? Can you hear us?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay.
I mean, I can.
Dr. Duda, and I hope that you will see our presentation soon. We are waiting for this moment. I'm sorry. Okay.
Here we go. Ah, yes, it's coming. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so yeah, you can. You saw for a moment Dr. Krzysztof Duda, who is co-author of this presentation, and we would like to present this issue, freedom of speech, during the time of pandemic COVID-19. However, it will be in fact, unfortunately, about the cases of violation of freedom of speech. This is obvious. The freedom of expression is one of elementary and fundamental human rights, constituting the basis of the functioning of democratic societies. However, at the same time, an indispensable condition for the development of the state and the, what is also important, individual. We have many international standards because maybe this is, let's start from International Declaration on Human Rights. This is not, of course, international law. However, today we celebrate the 73rd anniversary of announcement this declaration. However, of course, in the hard international law, we can find the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, also Article 19, and regional conventions. Let's start from European Convention on Human Rights and Article 10, chapter of fundamental rights of the European Union. However, please remember about also other regional conventions. I mean about Pact of San Jose, American Convention on Human Rights, and the Banjul Charter, the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights. I hope that on this session, mentioned regulations are obvious. However, we would like to underscore the permissible limitation of freedom of expression in international law. For example, we can find in ICCPR in Article 19.3 some possibilities of limitation of freedom of speech. For example, one of the reasons of such limitation is the public health. The same situation we can find in European Convention on Human Rights in Article 10, paragraph 2, case for the protection of health or morals. Yeah, the same, a little bit same situation is in American Convention on Human Rights in Article 13.2. For example, possibilities of limitation is possible in the case the protection or public health or morals. Yeah, the same. Yes, and COVID. Things will never be the same, we can say. However, this is a very this is a personal point of view, because we know that in the past we had many other such pandemics, disease, etc. However, these data are significant. I mean, special on this list, global data about the death, more than 5 million people. So, yeah, and we can find a kind of paradox, because on the one hand, even quoting United Nations Secretary General, who underscored, as COVID-19 spreads, a tsunami of misinformation, hate has been unleashed. In the COVID-19 health crisis, the spread of the infodemic can be as dangerous to human health and security as the pandemic itself. Among other negative consequences, COVID-19 has created conditions that enable the spread of disinformation, fake news, and doctored videos to incite violence and divide communities. So even World Health Organization proposed the definition of this term, infodemic. According to this definition, infodemic or misinformation, disinformation pandemic is a situation too much of information, including false or misleading information in digital and physical environments during a disease outbreak. It causes confusion and risk-taking behaviors that can harm health. It also leads to mistrust in health authorities and undermine the public health response. An infodemic can intensify on latent outbreaks when people are unsure about what they need to do to protect their health and the people around them. With growing digitalization and expansion of social media and internet use, information can spread more rapidly, of course. This can help to fill information voids more quickly and amplify harmful messages. And this is this paradox. So maybe we should also at this moment, at this point of our presentation, underscored this statement on freedom of expression and information in time of crisis by the Council of Europe's Committee of Experts on Media Environment and Reform. Here in this document, this committee underscored that in this time, pandemic of great public concern, it is of particular importance for member states to recognize the crucial role of independent media. So independent media always were and always will be very important in the political system. And we would like also to present some reports international organization, NGOs, which presented some data in this case. For example, according to International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, the freedom of expression has suffered severe declines into the last 2 years. According to this data, to this research, 55% of countries have passed law or taken action to restrict freedom of expression during the pandemic, often justifying such actions as a necessary way to combat misinformation about the virus, which itself has been defined as an infodemic. For example, I gave this example of World Health Organization. 38% countries have used new laws or mandates to criminalize disinformation. 18% of countries have used existing rules. 38 countries have made disinformation on COVID-19 an imprisonable offense. In at least 10 countries, the new laws are permanent and will last beyond the pandemic and risk causing long-term damage to freedom of expression in those countries. In 18 countries, according to this report, imposed fines for the spread of disinformation on COVID-19. For example, in Albania, Bulgaria, Mongolia, Philippines, and here in the Philippines, the penalties are the highest at $20,000 US.
1 minute, please.
Okay, let's jump to the conclusion in such situation, because we have also maybe 15 seconds about two cases from Poland. First case, the Commissioner for Human Rights asked her to, in 2020, March 30, the director of the National Institute of Oncology about his decision to prohibit all employers from speaking to the media about the functioning of this hospital. And second case, it was decision of Polish Ministry of Health from April 2020, special letters to all provincial infectious disease consultants prohibiting public statements about the coronavirus epidemic raging in Poland. Of course, we can find also good examples in the world. However, let's jump to the conclusion, because of course, we can agree that things will never be the same. COVID-19 related restriction on freedom of expression are not temporary, it seems. Extraordinary measures to deal with the temporary crisis. They are part of an onslaught on human rights. Many governments have found another excuse to ramp up their attacks on civil society. Whether such restriction, because justification, of course, we can try to understand. However, we have doubts. Such restriction were always justification. And I need 1 minute more, because I think that this is very important to say during this seminar. Something about other violation of human rights in Poland, because since early September, of course, this is not connected with coronavirus. However, this is, in my opinion, a very serious attack on freedom of expression. Since early September, journalists have been unable to report from inside a 3-kilometer wide strand of land along the Belarusian border placed under the state of emergency. After the 3 months of this state of emergency, Polish parliament announced announced the new law, in fact, the same law. Yeah. So we have many examples that journalists, not only from Poland, also from France, from Germany, were fined by this law. And maybe on the end, 3 years ago in Madrid, during the conference, during which we celebrated the 70th anniversary of Declaration of Human Rights, I told to speakers, to audience, the short epigram by Cyprian Kamil-Norwid. This is a 19th century Polish poet. Very short, only 4 lines. However, unfortunately, in my opinion, the thought contained in this epigram is still valid. Violent commanders, armies fully trained, police male, female, uniformed and plain, thus united against whom a few thought that aren't news. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for your presentation and for taking this really dramatically important topic, yeah, in such interesting and insightful way. Thank you very much indeed. And in fact, you reminded me that I should have started this session with saying Happy Human Rights Day.
Yeah.
So Happy Human Rights Day, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll move on to the next presentation by Mr. Zinichenko on how has the pandemic affected media freedom in Ukraine and Belarus. Mr. Zinichenko, the floor is yours, 10 minutes. Please go ahead. Please, microphone.
Yeah. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. And without further delay, let's start. As in every country, one of the most important aspects of the stability is respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. Today, I'm focusing on the freedom of information. And in theory, the national legislation of Ukraine and Belarus guarantees specific rights to journalists. For example, you can see the 2 articles from the Constitution of Belarus and from the Constitution of Ukraine. The main difference in the last points, because, for example, in Belarusian Constitution, no monopolization of mass media by the state and no censorship shall be permitted. And we see that in reality, the situation is totally different. And in case of Ukraine, the difference in the points connected to the cases when it is permitted to restrict this the freedom of information. Also, freedom of information guarantees and ensured by such laws in Ukraine, like we can see 6 laws, in Belarus 2 laws. However, the practical application of these laws in 2 countries differs. The COVID-19 pandemic has become more than just a responsibility for politicians. It gives them new opportunities to control media and society. Freedom of speech has been limited not only in authoritarian, but also in democratic countries. And my main goal is to show you the use of the COVID-19 pandemic as a pretext for restricting freedom of expression in Belarus and Ukraine. I analyze the cases according to the classification of EC and HADS, surveillance, censorship, and information manipulation, with some minor adjustments, which I will explain later.
Władysław, I'm sorry, because we can see your first slide.
Oh, yeah, again, this problem. Okay, let me just...
Exactly, yeah. You can change on your screen, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I will try to do in another way.
No, it was okay. Because
it
now
was-
we can't see your presentation.
Oh, okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah, now it's okay. Thank you.
Now
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The Belarusian authority decided to not recognize the pandemic at all. And there are two possible reasons for this. First of all, the economic situation in Belarus and the 2020 presidential election. Lukashenko adopted the tactics of smear campaigns. He called this situation the coronavirus psychosis, and journalists, he labeled them as scumbags spreading fake stories. He also set the task: we need to control our people and let the KGB be tougher here, and the police and the Ministry of Information monitor everyone. During my research, I found 24 cases of state restrictions on freedom of speech in Belarus, and majority of them connected to information manipulation. These cases include restricted access to official and public information from non-state journalists, refusal to comment on the topic of pandemic or ignoring requests from journalists by Ministry of Health, politicians, local governments, and doctors who were forbidden to do this. Also, I found the cases when there was incomplete information that was shared by authorities, or total silence on the topic, and governmental structures also requested to remove or correct information materials. 42% of cases connected to censorship, and this include criminalization, restriction, or punishment of so-called fake news. Why so-called? Because the label was based on the beliefs of the authorities, not objective reality. And also they used fines as punishment and revoke accreditation. And there was a case when Russian journalists were threatened with imprisonment for news materials about the coronavirus in Belarus. I have not found cases connected to surveillance. Instead, I will talk about the persecution of people, ordinary people, for posts on social media. For example, Dr. Natalia Larionova decided to speak publicly on her page in Kontakte about the real situation with COVID. And as a result, she was summoned to the prosecution office, and she was also forced to undergo a psychiatric examination. And medical worker Pavel Pavelchik, he told the truth about the pandemic to the famous YouTube blogger Sergei Tikhanovsky, who is now in jail. And as a result, he was summoned to the police station, sentenced for 7 days, and fired after all. In Ukraine, I found 57 cases of violation of freedom of speech, but please don't concentrate on the specific number. My main intention to show you the tendencies in these countries. So 37% was connected to the censorship, and these cases include threats from the mayor of Cherkasy. There was a situation when journalists tried to record the meeting of the city council, and he shows them that some episodes were undesirable to cover. I also include cases of physical attacks on journalists, persecution by unknown people, and online bullying. I decided to put it in this section because it may lead to the self-censorship of journalists. And according to the Institute of Mass Information, physical aggression against journalists increased by 10%, specifically because of quarantine. The majority of cases in Ukraine also connected to...
1 minute, please.
Okay, I will try to be fast. So the majority of cases connected to the information manipulation, journalists were not allowed to cover the session of city councils, court hearings, etc. Even press conferences of the president, there was limits on the journalists. I actually asked my colleague about her work experience, and she said that if before the pandemic, the contacts with the Ministry of Health was not established. It was very hard to do it during the pandemic, and yeah, there was problems under the ministry of Maxim Stepanov, but now Viktor Lyashko trying to change and open the ministry to the journalists. And in I will skip this point, but in conclusion, the COVID-19 pandemic has expanded opportunities to restrict media and societal freedoms, and both media environments have more problems with information manipulations and censorship. However, these problems are different in nature. Also, their consequences lead to the rise of fake news, reduced trust in authority, but most of all, hinders the development of the countries. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for your informative presentation. Thank you. And we will move on to the last presentation. Well, Nel will tell us about infodemic and COVID-19, how we find the truth. That's the question. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Professor. First of all, I would like to thank all Professor talking today, and especially I would like to say thank you so much for Professor Skrzydczak, who I was very lucky that he supervised my master thesis, which discussed the impact and the relationship between journalism and new media, the topic which is meet with somehow the important topic which I'm going to talk briefly today, which is the information epidemic and the impact of fake news, and I will take care of that at that time. I'm not sure if you see my presentation right now.
We do.
Yeah, okay. So let's go for first slide, which is the harmful of information. The world has become in a great torrent of information that's escalating and growing in a way in social media platform. Exactly, journalists and relevant institutions such as Facebook have been trying for many years, even before the pandemic. But we cannot simply say that it's succeed. However, with the topic being linked to the public health and the time of pandemic, the world has noticed a serious problem, and some may have become more aware of issue of rumors, false information, and harmful data. The information that people publish and share every day on various social media platforms is getting more and more harmful. Some of them are all intent. And often even also is not by intent, it's not correct information in the end. For second slide, we'll talk about information. Since the growth of the internet more and more day after day, and tendency of social media platform to be informational spot rather than the platform for communication between people. There are today many stories that confirm the danger of misinformation and information epidemic, and that's not least dangerous of any health crisis. Many studies show that people tend to misinformation more than correct. This may relate to wide sharing for the content, or maybe people like wrong information rather than correct information. But anyway, we face a challenge represented in the speed of spread and the lack of awareness in social media users. That's why every day we find a message in WhatsApp, for example, transferred from group of people and group of users to another group of users, and the circle being bigger and bigger. With each spread, the risk of negative impact from fake news increase, and we find ourselves facing additional challenge day after day. This raises a serious question through which we may find some solution. How is false information shaped? Nowadays, let's say the institution should not wait for the news to spread until the results are making sure and verifying it, because the matter going to become like infection. If you leave the news of the day, it will be 3 times of tomorrow among the people. This human behavior, by the way, in the end, and the part of our social interactions, false news may be formed to serve some goals of people, and maybe also formed for unconsciously. But anyway, it's a harmful information. And one of the biggest challenges that the merging of when we merging the truth with false like mixing of correct information with false information. As we see, people have great confusion about the information they see every day in social media. Misinformation is formed by what people do every day in social media, maybe to attract others by making up fake stories, which is most preferred by social media users. And since the news of coronavirus appeared, social media platform interacted more than traditional media. We also noted that Twitter was active during with misinformation, but we also do not forget that Facebook had a huge role in this role. Especially regarding the vaccine. According to the American Health Organization, we found that more than 300 fake news about COVID-19 were found in Brazil as an example. Most of them spread via WhatsApp and Facebook. The most common thematic categories were policy by more than 20% about epidemic death and infection statistics, and more than 19 according to Google Trends. The number of searching using terms retrieved from fake news increased by 34. Pew Research Center as well, experts are dived over whether the next decade will see a decrease in false and misleading narratives spread online. Some believe that fight against fake news will be by technology, while others believe that maybe the technology will be the biggest reason for misinformation to continue for spreading. Therefore, it can be said that technology is main reason for both cases. One of the biggest challenge as well, the health organization faced during the pandemic exactly also fake news, because it's created great contradiction between public. So what was done and what should be done? No one can deny the fact over the past year, social media platform and the media organization at all have made a lot of efforts to stop the spread of rumors and misinformation, such as fact-checking projects, as well as the label social media platform place and untrue news. Twitter and Facebook projects to verify information as well. But to be honest, this effort will not having achieved everything. People still face hundreds, if not thousands, of false news every day. We face many challenges about misinformation. For that, media organizations need to work more with social media platform to launch joint project and develop more systematic mechanism for verifying information and dissemination of media culture among the public that will be helping to stop the false and going for true news. For that 1 minute, we can go for recommendation to just like helping to stop the fake news. All kind of media, including print and online media, social media platform as well, should focus more in media culture and enhance effort to disseminate such knowledge. It's important as well to launch initiative that raise public awareness of misinformation between public audience. And also we need to increase the efforts of social media platform to identify misinformation by correct way and increasing public awareness about the most famous information fabrication technology, which have today a great ability to devise and mislead the people. Once again, thank you very much for that invitation to talk about this very important topic, which is misinformation and its impact in the society.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your substantial presentation. Yeah. So we have exhausted the list of speakers now. So I invite Professor Joanna Rak to share with us her reflections and comments on the content of this session. Professor Rak?
Thank you so much, Professor Porosiński. I found all presentations outstanding. I believe that the research results that you've presented significantly contribute to contemporary political sciences. They contribute to our understanding of the protection of human rights in the constantly changing political reality. I've prepared some specific comments and questions for all session participants. I hope you'll find them useful. I know that we have not very much time, but we may leave the questions as food for thought,
Yes.
or try to deal with them shortly.
Later. Yeah.
Professor Wojciech Adamczyk, I found your presentation extremely important for our understanding of changes in contemporary political regimes, mostly democracies that drift towards hybrid systems or even autocracies. And the category of the changes or the influence of the pandemic in the media market on information pluralism is undoubtedly understudied, and as you've aptly uncovered in your presentation, it is still a challenge for contemporary researchers. And my question is to you as an expert in the field, what general trends in information pluralism changes do you consider the most important for the development of contemporary democracies? Mrs. Anna Wójcik, I found your speech very interesting in terms of the conditions of the self-defense mechanisms that are included in contemporary democracies, the so-called militant democracies or neo-militant democracies. And it was very interesting what you said about, on the one hand, challenges, on the other hand, threats and the ways of dealing with them. And my question is, at the level of a political regime, how can it be how can it protect itself from the impact of slabs that are in use? Professor Bartosz Hordecki, your topic is close to my heart. Language policies are important mechanisms of contemporary neo-militant democracies. And it would be extremely interesting to me to learn, how do you think did the language policies serve during the pandemic to protect Ukrainian political nation, or to exclude from the discourse those who did not belong to it, according to those who imposed the policies? Professor Jędrzej Skrzypczak and Dr. Krzysztof Duda, in your presentation, it was amazing to see how skillfully you've interpreted the role of scaremongering and scapegoating in spreading the infodemic. These two mechanisms are as well understudied and somehow missed by researchers who try to delve analytically into the very nature of the changes in the way how we protect political nations. And here, what I would consider informative, and I believe that researchers could benefit from is to learn from you what legal measures of fighting the infodemic you consider efficient and which are, in your opinion, inefficient. Władysław Zyniczenko. It was very inspiring to see the comparison formulated on the basis of listing some restrictions and measures used by the politicians in order to influence the sovereignty of the political nations. And I found it contributing to the ongoing discussion that emerged out of Jonathan Gershevsky's article related to the way how the political elites stabilize contemporary political regimes, and here there once again emerges a question: which measure is more efficient, either to repress or to delegitimize those who are considered the enemies of the regime? And here my question is, what were the major differences in repression and delegitimization of those who are considered enemies, so those who try to protect some values important from the perspective of human rights in Ukraine and Belarus? And do you consider those mechanisms efficient? And finally, Volnel, your presentation, as I believe, may be an amazing starting point for studying the cycles of life of the infodemic. And it may be a great breakthrough in our approach towards the understanding of misinformation, malinformation, and so on. And my question that emerges out of your insightful remarks is, do you think that we have the finished cycles of life of the infodemic, or do we observe still some new patterns that occur? Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for providing me with the opportunity to discuss your papers.
Professor Rack, thank you so much for sharing with us your thoughts, and I think you were always ready to capture the heart of the matter, so I couldn't agree more with your comments. And I think we would give an opportunity to the speakers to reply and to comment, but 1 minute each. Yeah. So if you would like to take the floor, just let me know, and you have 1 minute each. Lady, gentlemen.
I can start,
yes,
if possible, but I mean, do it in So my brief answer to the comment that was, if I may.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. 1 minute.
So the brief answer would be that there is, in Europe at least, there is no state level legislation or international organization level legislation against SLAPPs. There has been some anti-SLAPP laws adopted in some parts of the United States, for example, in California. However, right now in the European Union, there is a great debate on the necessity of improving protection of journalists. And the Commissioner Vera Jourova has been discussing the ideas for the European Media Freedom Act. Actually, no draft projects have been disclosed yet, so we are right now still a bit in the dark about this new future legislation or a package of legislation. But it seems that one of the elements would be a European Union's directive on, European directive against SLAPPs targeted at journalists. And there has been SLAPP task force created, which includes experts that provide their insights to the European Commission. And there has been many studies also commissioned.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your answer.
That's my turn, yes?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, you asked me about a broad issue. The actions of governments are a threat to the pluralism of information, the diversity of news sources, the right to criticism, and the right to freedom of expression, of course. It's difficult to say today exactly how the COVID-19 pandemic will affect the media market and information pluralism in the long term. All we can do is predict. For example, we can say that the print media will end its existence as it stands sooner than we previously thought, but it's just a prediction, of course. Another example, we can say that the social media will be more and more a source of disinformation that has been so far, but it's also just anticipation. Let me remind what Mark Twain wrote. If you don't read the newspaper, you are uninformed. If you do read the newspaper, you are misinformed. And now we can add to these words that we are disinformed as recipients of media messages during COVID-19 pandemic. I think that's all.
Thank you very much, Professor Adamczyk. Thank you for this comment. Professor Hordecki.
Thank you, Professor Jan Narak, for going towards theorizing the topic and for your very interesting remarks. The answer to your question, either protecting or building Ukrainian political nation or excluding people who do not use Ukrainian language, both answers are correct. And I will tell you very briefly why. One phrase: because of the powerful neighbor of Ukraine, you are not able to design today language policy in Ukraine in that way that you have not only protection of Ukrainian political nation and also protection of individuals. That's because of Russia, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And Professor Skrzypczak, would you like to take the floor for 1 minute?
Very, very shortly. And answering for your question, thank you for your comments and for question. We can say that always we should looking for golden mean. And this is such scale. This is very problematic. However, thank you very much for such a suggestion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Władysław Ziniczenko, 1 minute.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Rak, for your comments. My answer to the major differences is that the major difference is in system. In Ukraine, it's more decentralized, it's more local, so it's easier to voice these restrictions of freedom of speech for journalists. It's easier to unite them. In Belarus, it's more centralized. Everything is coming from the central government, and maybe the tougher mean to silence journalists, it's imprisonment. For sure, in Belarus, it's like the most complicated case. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, Nel, would you like to say something in 1 minute?
Yes. Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Professor, for this remark and questions. According to research finding, the public of social media audience shared false information 3 times more than correct information. So I think we're still having a large information epidemic among the social media users, which need more efforts and collaborate between organizations, media organization and social media platform to raise awareness towards this a dangerous epidemic information and rumors as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I close this session, and I want to say big thank you to the organizers and to all the speakers for this really great, insightful, and very, very interesting session indeed. Thank you very much. And I close the session now. And Professor Skrzypczak, I guess I turn, you know.
Okay, thank you very much, especially for your comments, introduction, however, also for sense of timing. Thank you very much, because it was excellent. I hope that Oskar, is joining to this session. Okay, so I would like to ask Chair RC26 IPSA, Professor Oscar Perez de la Fuente, for summarizing this conference. Oscar, please.
Yes, thank you. I would like to dedicate a few words to say thank you to all participants, chairs, and discussants at this conference. These past few days has been academically stimulating and filled of fruitful discussions. I will also like to thank Adam Mickiewicz, University of Poznan in Poland, and senior members of staff for their support in organizing this event about how the world has changed over the past 2 years. Even this event has been affected by the COVID pandemic. As a chair of IPSA RC26 on human rights, I would like to encourage scholars to sign up to IPSA and benefit for its advantages, such as participating in events like this. I would like also to share with you that we have planned for 2022, and we are preparing a webinar in several sessions on digital minorities. We will send you a call for papers soon. Please do keep an eye on the IPSA RC26 social networks for updates. I would like to thank JJ Jędrzejczyk, sorry for my bad pronunciation of Polish, who has been particularly involved in the organization of this event. I hope we will maintain this budding relationship and organize more events. COVID has changed the world and the way scholars meet. We would like to reflect on new ideas, and I hope we will be able to meet in person in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oscar. And I would like also on the end to thank all of you who agreed to participate in our conference and deliver lectures from basically all over the world, Brazil, Mexico, Ghana, many European countries, even from Hawaii. And the professors who agreed to take the trouble of chairing individual sessions and fulfilling the role of discussant. Without you, this conference would not have been possible. Special thanks for RC26 IPSA Society, RC26 board, and of course, special thanks to chair of RC26, Professor Oscar. Thank you very much for your passion and for many evenings which we spent on Skype discussing about this conference. I would like at this point to thank the entire faculty team who helped me organize this event. Special thanks to Krzysztof Duda, Alina Balczyńska, Magdalena Lorenz, and Władysław Zinchenko. Thank you very much. And maybe the last suggestion, maybe this is a short thought, because I think maybe the December 10 is a good date for celebrating or for discussing about human rights. I think that maybe RC26 should meet every 10th of December for such discussing. Of course, maybe in the webinar mode. However, why not? Maybe this is this is our job, and maybe this is our task for future. What do you think, Oscar?
Yeah, I hope so. It's not a bad idea. We can celebrate the Day of Human Rights in the RC26 on human rights. Yes, it's not a bad idea. We will manage. We will manage. Hopefully, we will manage.
I would like also to thanks also of volunteers who helped us during this not only 2 days, however, before this conference. Thank you very much, ladies, special to our colleagues from our faculty, our students, PhD students. Thank you very much. And once again, thank you very much for all comments, for all questions, and I hope it was very fruitful for all of us. Thank you very much. So now.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. See you, I hope soon, maybe in Poznań or somewhere in the world, on other RC26 or IPSA events.
Okay, yeah, see you in a future IPSA event. See you.
See you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you as soon as possible.
Good day.
Maybe, okay. No dobra, to myślałem.
I just hope that, okay, more fire.
Okay, Tatiana, thank you very much.
I just wanted to say a few words about, plans, etc. I see that Oscar has already just disappeared from.
It was very short closing